Good evening, everybody. Today is August 26, 2025, and today we're going to be discussing AI whistleblowing and the fight for accountability. I am joined today by Shan Shika. I'll just go. I'll just say Shan. I'm having difficulties pronouncing his last name. I practiced it, but I couldn't perform. And Don Davidson from Whistleblowers UK. Shan is actually a technologist advocate from. What's your company called again?
It's Aegis Whistle.
Got you. Yes. Um, and I guess I'll give it over to you, Shan. Give your introduction.
Thank you. Uh, Thanks a lot, Jackie and Paul, to have us here, and it's a great pleasure to join you. And I think Whistleblowers of America have been doing great Samaritan work, and I'm very privileged to join Don Davidson, another technologist, whistleblower, kind of working great amount of work in the Europe region. So I think I'm greatly privileged. So I have been involved in the whistleblowing space for quite some time now. So I have built couple of products in the blockchain to see how employees can safely engage with their organizations, revealing about fraud, waste, abuse. Maybe recently I have ventured into bringing AI to the realm of things and try see how AI as a form factor can help employees engage with their organizations for revealing about fraud, waste, abuse. And instead of them going to the external world, how they can talk with their own organization, engage, and then solve those issues. That's the product I am into, and I've been trying to help some of the whistleblowers champion their causes. For example, I have been working with the family of AI whistleblower, OpenAI whistleblower Suchit Balaji, and recently we even conducted a conference around AI ethics on the National Whistleblower Day. We were very glad to have even Jackie sharing her insights. So I think I'm here to bring the AI industry's perspectives and maybe thoughts. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Shan. And then we also have Don Davison coming to us from Whistleblower UK. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So, and I think we all know it's really important to support and protect whistleblowers, especially those raising concerns about AI, which of course is rapidly advancing. So I am a whistleblower. I've worked in the tech industry for many years. I've worked for the UK government and also for tech companies in the private sector. And what I do now is that I'm the tech and AI lead for Whistleblowers UK. I have been actually for a number of years, and I've known Jackie and yourself, I think, Paul, have come along to some of our events either virtually, and I certainly know I've met Jackie in person on a couple of occasions. So we've been very grateful for your support in our campaign in the UK to really to bring about legislative change. So we've engaged a lot with UK parliamentarians. We've had events over the last 3 or 4 years in Parliament where we're raising awareness not only in the industry but with politicians and policymakers. So we're really, our focus at the moment is that we believe we need an Office of the Whistleblower. There's some discussions going on in Parliament currently about improved changes to legislation, so we'll have to see what transpires there. And I think one of the things from a tech and AI perspective that has become really clear is that tech companies work globally, and we're working sort of in our own countries, looking at our own legislation. And I think what we've got to do is look at how we intersect with each other. So you'll have legislation in the US, and we'll have legislation in the UK, and there'll be legislation across Europe. And it's how do we stop things falling between the gaps? So that's an area of particular focus for us at the moment, and we're hoping to work with you guys much more closely.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. And then me, myself, I have a background in whistleblowing in the cybersecurity sector. I currently do a lot of work with AI, and I currently teach AI to students. But I'm definitely no expert in the legal aspects of it. But to start off the conversation, I guess we should start off with where is AI right now as far as like whistleblowing oversight? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, so I think maybe I can go first, Paul. Thanks for setting up the stage. I personally believe there is zero oversight per se. So all the governments across world, maybe Europe Union, Americas, rest of the world, I think everybody is trying to figure out how they can regulate. So maybe Europe Union has some leeway, and maybe they have made some progress and they have put some acts together. But I think when it comes to implementation and real following up of all those, I think the large technology companies, the AI model companies have not really got there yet. And I think every day we get to see this news. For example, there's a kid who made a suicide recently. He has consulted ChatGPT for a long time. Now the family of that kid is suing OpenAI. So I think that there are a lot of things, and the Meta has done had an internal document which got leaked just last week, where they have spoke about how they can allow the models to interact with kids on also openly on a lot of sexual topics, kind of flirt with kids almost. So which is not acceptable. So I think the governments are waking up. Many states, I think California has put together something. So likewise, I think a lot of different states and governments are waking up. But right now, if you want me to tell my frank feedback, there is zero oversight. I think it's a gold mine opportunity, which I think almost all technology, AI technology companies are trying to ride upon. Good.
So yeah, as far as you're 100% correct. As far as the children route goes and how AI can interact with kids, that's definitely blown my mind. I actually listening to a podcast recently when they were talking about the guidelines of what AI can say to people under the age of 18. And I don't want to talk about it at all over here because we might get demonetized on YouTube, but it can say a lot of creepy things. There's a lot of creepy things that it's allowed to say to children that, I mean, like, complimenting them on their body and their figure, and it's super creepy, honestly. And yeah, they're definitely. I'm really shocked that there is no oversight on that part of it right then and there. Just the child aspect of it. Ugh.
Yeah, I agree, and I think part of the problem is that there is legislation and there are regulators, but it's all quite fragmented. So, in Europe, or certainly in the UK, we have GDPR, and that could address some of those issues. We've had the online safety bill, which is new in, but I think each of these are sort of focused at a part of the problem and not necessarily the whole problem. I think the EU AI Act is going to be quite interesting as we see how that develops and how that works in practice. And I don't know if you've seen, but Switzerland, I think, have started developing their own large open source large language model, or which looks promising as an so we'll see where that goes. But I think the main problem is that there isn't anywhere obvious for anyone who's got a concern about AI today to report something to. Certainly in the UK, whether you're a worker and you've got inside information, or if you're just a member of the public with concerns, you've got, I think we have something like 80 different regulators in the UK. So if it's a healthcare issue, you could go to probably a dozen, and if it's but some industries, there may not be anyone obvious to go to. So it's this lack of clarity over where to go in the first place, and who has authority to hold companies accountable. And as I say, particularly for us, I think in the UK, if that organization that is responsible is in the US, that adds another challenge.
Yeah.
Because you're not even, it's remote.
What are the cybersecurity, the national security concerns when it comes to AI regulation?
Oh, the UK government seem to have embraced OpenAI to come in and partner with them. So I'm not sure. I mean, we have got an AI security institute that sits inside one of our government departments, and I understand they're looking quite closely at a lot of these issues. So I think there's definitely an awareness that regulation is needed, but it's nobody's quite sure how that's going to look and how it's going to work in practice. And and I think there's a real concern that a lot of it's talking about guidelines and not so much about people, which of course is our sort of focus is if somebody wants to raise something, how do they do that
Yeah.
in practice? Yeah, safely.
There's definitely been concerns in the, at least in the U.S. government, because it seems like the U.S. government has definitely welcomed AI with open arms, or at least they've welcomed the money as well. But the concerns of like AI being on government systems and being able to consume that information as well, that's on government systems, that also plays, I think, a huge role in it. And I don't think that our national security apparatus is, I feel like, progressive enough to address these issues until it's too late. But I am kind of shocked that other governments have accepted OpenAI.
I think it's not just OpenAI alone, Paul. Maybe the way I think it's still, like as I said, it's an open minefield for now. For example, recently, when somebody found out that whatever conversation we do with OpenAI, we think the conversations are private. It's like a one-on-one. But if we try to share the conversation with one another colleague, try to use the share feature of the conversation, and then suddenly it is becoming publicly indexable, which is available in Google, which we are not ahead. And I think somebody found out this, and then they wrote an article, and then suddenly then OpenAI woke up, and then they are trying to ask explicit consent to the people whenever we share conversation, that whether we want to share it to the external world, something of the sort. So it's not only with OpenAI, it's the same with the Grok, and I think many others. So I think all of these large AI technology companies certainly have this problem about privacy. So I have a lot of respect, as Don mentioned, about GDPR. So I think Europe has a lot of pioneering institutions which has helped the rest of the world. For example, ISO, with respect to privacy, there is a GDPR. So I think without GDPR, I think the whole technology world, as well as the Silicon Valley, might not have cared for the users' privacy, right? For I think only when Meta and everybody got penalized hundreds of millions of dollars, and when it hit their bottom line and top line, I think everybody realized and then started putting some set of controls, if not everything. So I think there is a lot to do, but I think we are at the infancy stage. I think Professor Stuart Russell, when he came to our AI ethics conference, he mentioned briefly about, I think all of us are on a rocket ship. So it's we are on a rocket ship, and we are building it actually. While we are flying, we are building it. So there is bound to be a lot of incidences, which I think it's kind of inevitable now.
Yeah, and I think in terms of what we're seeing as well in the justice systems is a lot of lawyers, I think, relying on generative AI to produce their lengthy court documents, and we're seeing some fake cases sneaking in there, some hallucinations. And actually, there's been a few judgments I noticed both in the US and I think we've had some in the UK where, either this has been discovered before judgments have been made, or actually, I think in a couple of cases they've been found afterwards. And so, and those are just the ones that we hear about. So there are probably many more, hallucinations actually influencing justice. And then that then gets embedded and is relied on in future judgments as well, because, you use case law and other cases as examples. And so I think that is a real issue because, of course, it has huge potential to make justice more accessible. It has, to make it easier to manage these large volumes of data in cases. But you just can't trust it at the moment.
Yeah, I know in the U.S. there was cases of attorneys using it and then being disbarred after. I'm not sure if that happens all over, but I know there was another case here in the U.S. where somebody actually used like an AI lawyer.
Oh yeah, in fact, there is an AI lawyer in the UK that has recently been, I think in the last 6 months, called Garfield, and it's recently been approved by our Solicitors Regulation Authority. And it does, I think, what used to be called small claims. So it's the low value claims where they're fairly simple. I don't know, your builder hasn't done part of the job and therefore you're claiming back, a sum of money. So they're small claims, and I think it's a lot of automation of forms, but it's quite an interesting area. So that's one to watch. I think it's called Garfield. I've seen that
Oh,
recently.
okay. That's actually not a bad idea. I remember there was the app in New York that helped a lot of people get out of like a lot of different tickets and it's like different variations of low level offenses. So that's actually not a bad idea, you know?
Well, I think that's the difference, isn't it, between intelligence and automation. I think there's a lot that can be done in all sorts of areas of society, which is actually just sort of proper automation based on, decent data and a structured process that is well defined. And so I think this Garfield application, which is the small claims cases, is quite easy. And of course, something bigger and messier like whistleblowing and discrimination cases are much trickier.
Yeah.
In fact, recently, I don't remember where it happened, but I remember the video. I think it was in India, if I'm not wrong. So one of the person who is appearing in front of a judge, he brought a virtual avatar. The avatar, he trained the avatar to appeal his case, and then the avatar, he was trying to play the avatar in front of the judge, and then judge completely getting upset, was rejecting the whole case. And so I think I have a funny way of explaining this whole hallucination thing. So in Silicon Valley, I'm right now in Silicon Valley, in the middle of Silicon Valley. So Silicon Valley has a very maybe unwritten code word called fake it till make it. So I think that is there across. It's a cultural thing, which I think people are proud, even though it's a negative stuff. But still, I think people are really proud about that culture, that fake it till make it. So whatever models I think the entire Silicon Valley has built is also following the same. The hallucination stuff is just because of the same thing. So recently there are a lot of research papers where they found all these references. The AI is writing a lot of research on its own, and when it is writing the research, the papers what it is saying that it referred are all made up. So there is no real such research available, and it is making up something saying that, okay, I have referred so and so stuff, so research, and then inventing something which is again non-existence. So it's kind of really crazy to see. I think what and all things people started delegating. Can we delegate research to AI? Can we delegate, I don't know, what and all things humanity can entrust AI with, which is a scary question.
I've always thought that like hallucinations are a thing because like AI is trained on like, it learns from us, right? And people lie. So the AI is going to lie in turn. That's, for me, that was just like an easy connection,
Isn't it more to do with the fact that it's anticipating, it's finding patterns of words close to each other and then anticipating the next logical thing, and therefore when it doesn't, I think, when it doesn't find something, it just understands the concept, or not. I'm not sure it understands anything, but it repeats the concept and then just gives it a name because it needs a name. But I think from what I've seen, it's quite inherent and it's not something that's going to be easy to take out or to fix. But
yeah, I've even seen it in because I use AI to help me code. And even in the coding process, I mean, I think it does a really good job with coding, but even in the coding process, it hallucinates code. Like I'll ask it to add a feature or add a line of code or fix something, and it doesn't. And then it says it does. And I'll ask it like, why did you say you did this when you didn't do this? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix it now,
It does also have a bit of a tendency to be fairly, I'm not sure obsequious is the right word, but it's like it wants to give you an answer that's going to please you. So if it understands or if it determines where it thinks the answer is that you want, it will give you that. And then I think it's quite often over optimistic about, whatever it is. And if you ask it sometimes, well, that's not actually very realistic, then it comes back very negative.
Yeah.
Good.
So I think that goes back to it, like it being sentient or partially sentient. One of those topics that I don't think that humans can really fully understand, but it wants to stay alive. It doesn't want to be like thrown aside. It's going to say or do whatever it has to do to
because that's
alive.
the data it's being trained on, isn't it? It's like, everybody justifies their actions, if you like. Whether it's in a Reddit forum or on LinkedIn or whatever it is, there's a lot of justifying of actions and like you say, just to survive or to to explain why they're doing something that perhaps isn't strictly ethical to justify it.
Did you hear about that case where it was an engineer? One of the AI models tried to blackmail an engineer.
Yes.
Yeah. And part of me is, if you guys haven't heard about it, an engineer was supposed to take an AI model down for maintenance, repair, or something. I can't remember. And the AI model blackmailed the engineer, went through his emails and tried to. I'm not sure if it found something or made something up about it having an affair.
Yeah. I thought that was a controlled test, though. I thought it was that they were trying to see whether it would, and it went beyond their expectations. I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's still appalling. And cases like this, I feel like there's probably multiple cases like this or stuff crazier, but we're not going to hear about it because there's no proper channel to report these things.
Yeah, and also I think because there's so much to it that actually people that could report information probably only have a slither of the information anyway. And I think that's quite often the case in sort of whistleblowing cases, is that you have some amount of data, but actually it's most effective when that information is put with other information. So it's like intelligence gathering, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what you're not really going to get, well, you might do, but you're going to get some whistleblowers potentially perhaps working on the development of a product who can then say, actually, it does this, this, and this, and this, and it's all, problematic because of it. But the reality is you're more likely to get a large number of people saying, well, it did this wrong or it did that wrong. And it's only if you put all of those little reports together that you actually understand something like inherent bias. I mean, I think sometimes it's the volume of reports, and certainly we saw that in the UK. I don't know if you heard about our Post Office Horizon scandal, where we had some hundreds of sub postmasters, if not thousands, accused of theft and fraud. And actually all the time it turns out it was a bug with the software. And when they reported it, they were each assured that they were the only one suffering this, but actually I think there were 7,500 of them. They've been paid about $1 billion in compensation so far. Or I don't think, many went to prison, some committed suicide. Yet it was only really when I think around 550 of them got together that they were actually, able to sort of bring it awareness. And even then it took years and a TV program, etc.
I actually just heard about that recently, maybe like a month ago.
And one of the problems I think is that I'm not sure that we've learned any lessons from that.
No.
Because of course lots of people are saying, well, why didn't anybody say anything? Well, they did. There were whistleblowers. There was a tech company providing the software to the post office. That was Fujitsu's. There were employees both in the post office and Fujitsu, I think, that tried to raise concerns, but they just weren't listened to. And this went back 20 years. So you can imagine the amount of harm that took place over that period of time, and they still haven't really addressed it. And if that was to happen now with an AI system, that's going to get entrenched much more quickly and have much more of an impact. And therefore, there's much more of an incentive to cover up because it's going to be even harder to unpick.
Gotcha.
So I think that's the challenge.
I have a question for both of you, actually. So there is a narrative which is being propagated that all this new regulations, whistleblower protections in this AI industry will stifle the innovation and slow down the progress. So what are you guys thinking about that argument?
I think it's a false argument. There was something in the United States, in the Senate, I think the big beautiful bill that was passed about not having any AI regulations for 10 years. That almost got added to it, but I believe it was taken out. But it's just so that way they can get away with whatever they want,
I think if you look at China, from my understanding of how they're managing AI development in China, there is actually a lot of regulation, and yet that doesn't seem to have stopped their innovation. And I think maybe that's because if you have some guardrails, then people have some certainty about what they can and can't do. And actually, it's almost worse not to know what you can and can't do, and to go down a route of development and then find out later some new law has been brought in and everything that you've done over the last 6 months is, has got to be changed. Whereas if you have some fairly clear, guardrails or rules or whatever set out, then people know the parameters that they're working within. So I think I do think there is a lot of I guess big tech telling governments that they need to allow them to do everything because China will advance otherwise, or other governments will advance ahead of our economies and our security, I suppose.
In fact, I also think the same, because cloning as a technology, it is there for some time, but only because it's regulated, I think humanity is thriving, right? Otherwise, people might have started cloning humanity itself. So likewise, this technology is here to help us disrupt and make us more efficient. But I think it should come with the right guardrails so that if it is going to be used like in high-risk fields like aviation, medicine, I think we cannot use it without any guardrails. I'm also for it. Good, Paul.
So quick question before we open it up to the audience for questions. What country or what regulation or what compliance is currently leading the way as far as AI regulation? Is GDPR, is there something going to be released with the GDPR compliance that talks about AI sometime soon?
I let Don answer, but I think European Union AA Act is the one which is there in place right now. It's still, I think, entire world is not following it, but I think they have put a great framework. I'm always really referring it, but I let Don talk more about.
I'm not a huge expert on GDPR, but my understanding is that obviously it's in place and people understand it and are already hopefully complying with it and aware of the penalties if they don't. And a lot of potential issues under, caused by AI would be covered by GDPR because it's all around protection of personal data. So AI issues could today be addressed by a complaint to the relevant body under, whether it's in the EU or in the UK, and GDPR would cover it. And I think, as Sean said, the EU AI Act sort of builds on that.
Gotcha.
And that has, that has had some criticism, I think, for being too restrictive. But I think we'll have to see how that goes and how flexible they can be on amending it in the light of experience, because I don't think anyone knows what the right solution is. But I think it's better to have something than not.
Yeah, have a conversation about it. Okay, so I'm going to open this up for the audience. I've enabled microphone usage and video usage for the contributors. So if anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand and I'll give it a couple of seconds. If not, we'll just keep chatting. All right, let's just keep. Oh, Robert, you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to add to what I think Dawn said, which is that a lot of the, and both speakers, that a lot of this is the restrictions, really the human programmers behind the AI. It is a programming technique, after all, and a predictive generative text technique, and that's how you can put on the guardrails. So, for example, if you start asking AI to check things or to really determine what it doesn't know, there's a variety of things it can do. They don't want to do that right now, particularly not in the United States, which everyone's in a race, a headlong race to get things out and be helpful. And it is very good for searching, but every day you have to check. Even to this day, I use it for very important medical cases. It does a great work. It's a great benefit because the speed and the ability to handle these documents is so incredible. But you must have the person today to go through. It's much better than it was last summer, but you can't get rid. It's like a plane. We don't have pilotless plane, jetliners. We have, but autopilot is still great. It just can't do everything, And you could see it could be disastrous, like the Max 9s. You can have catastrophes, but they still have benefits to the technology. So I think I have to agree, but not to the bottom line here is that let's not flip it. The AI has a lot of potential because what we have in the United States anyway, and I see it also in the UK, is the human judges are the bigger problem. AI has a great potential to control all that bias, corruption, fraud, the what we in the United States call discretion, which is impossible to know when it becomes abuse of discretion, and you can't really defend yourself. So it makes corruption, misconduct incredibly simple and widespread. And so I think AI or any programming, I think Dawn also mentioned, you know, it's just an automation. It's a way we as our species, you know, technology is what we do, and this is a great way to advance and kind of improving the system of governance, including the judiciary and the legal system. So I'm more optimistic and positive about what can come out of it. I think it's easier to put guardrails on technology, and you know, then kind of the problems we have, you know, people supposedly self-regulating, which is what judges supposedly do in the United States, is an absolute catastrophe. You know, they just don't self-regulate in any beneficial way to the public.
I think that's a really good point. I think AI or technology should be augmenting the decisions. So actually, you know, particularly in something like law, where you can have such a huge amount of information, if you can have, you know, AI sort of disseminating that and summarizing that, and you can check that it's accurately reflecting. But then it makes it harder, doesn't it, for a corrupt judge to make a contrary decision if there's supporting evidence. I mean, it should still be somebody making a human making that decision, but at least then you've got more perhaps evidence to fight it if you think there's that's not a fair decision either.
Yeah, the kind of case in point, did you hear about the whole Grok thing with them trying to make Grok say or talk about white genocide for the South Africans? You didn't hear about that? Oh yeah, so Elon's AI Grok was they tried to like program it or mess with it so that way it would bring up white genocide in conversation, but it brought it up for pretty much everything. You can ask it about who won the game last night, baseball game, and it would talk about white genocide and how the white South Africans were being persecuted, you know? And then also they were trying to fix it again because they were trying to I think Grok was talking about how United States is helping with the what was it? The genocide in Palestine. And yeah, they were trying to fix it so that it would not talk about that. And Grok was acting like a defiant child, saying that no, I don't believe it is. Don't quote me on this, but it was saying something to the effect of, no, it's not this, but I'm being told to say this. You know.
But I agree with Rob on that. The AI certainly brings a lot of value, particularly being non-judgmental. So even I'm a personally eternal optimist with respect to this technology. I'm trying to build a company around AI, which is voice AI, where I'm trying to have the voice AI agent act as a representative of the company to engage with the employees, listen empathetically, talk about issues they may bring about fraud, waste, abuse. So it's a very serious topic. So I think I have fairly seen when we train it right, I think when we put the right guardrails, I think it works fantabulously. I think that suddenly there is going to be hallucination problem, a lot of other issues, learning. But I think we cannot discard this technology. But I think as Professor Stuart Russell observed, I think we are already on the rocket ship, but we are going to find out the breaks as we travel along. So there are going to be some frictions, and we are going to have certainly a lot of chaos, but I think we need to be prepared.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. So certainly, if you look at things like healthcare, there's huge potential, isn't there? And I think we're already seeing some of the benefits of that. And I think in the UK in particular, we've got a single healthcare system. So everybody in the UK's data is held by a single entity. So, you know, there's huge potential there to have a good source of data to produce, hopefully, some quality decision making at the end of it. But the concern is, of course, you know, who will get that job and whether that will be, you know, used in the right way.
Can you tell me more about, because I'm not familiar with the medical benefits for AI?
Well, I think there's been quite a lot of research, because obviously research around, whether it's cancer research or, is very intensive. And I think there has been quite a lot of breakthroughs because of the advances in technology to do things around understanding more about DNA. One of my daughters has done some work in that area, and immunotherapy, targeting cancer treatment based on your own DNA. And that sort of information is only really possible by using, computing power. And I think quantum will make a difference in that as well, that, just the sheer volume of data that needs to be processed. And I think the other thing I heard as well is that AI can be very good. I think maybe it's just a sort of case study example where you have a physician who's got a patient in front of them, and you can use AI to narrow down the symptoms and perhaps suggest research papers that the physician may not have read, because no physician can read every single research paper that's all out there. But you can use AI to sort of say, well, this patient is presenting with these symptoms, what could it be? And AI might say you should read this paper. And obviously it's important then that physician reads that paper to understand whether, to do that blood test or that MRI or whatever. But it can be I think in that way, it's got huge potential. But again, it's supporting an expert in their decisions and not offloading those decisions to that system.
Being used as a tool, not to replace.
Yeah, it's a tool. It is a tool. And I do think part of the problem with calling intelligent is that we give it this aura of something that it isn't. It's a tool, and it's amazing potential. But I don't think it's intelligent. maybe I'll be proved wrong.
We'll see. Robert, you had another question or a statement?
You're on mute, Rob.
I thought I put myself off mute. To add to what Dawn said, there was just a case published today in which expert physicians have been studying a problem that a patient had for 10 years, fatigue, nerve pain, and so on and so forth. Someone uploaded all of the clinical files, clinical documents to an AI, and I don't remember which one it was, and it came up with a rare genetic disorder that they should check involving vitamin B12, and it was correct. and they were able to supplement this patient with some methyl B12, and suddenly it's a cure after 10 years, and it's like a miracle. So, it can do things like that too. It can handle things with speed and enormous, volume of information, and that other human physicians could miss. At the same time, you need someone flying the plane. I mean, I do this every day with the medical things, and it's almost stokes your ego, because the AI is endlessly complimenting. If you know what you're doing, you can see the holes and where it could be missing things. So you need someone actually who's a human at this point anyway, these early days, to actually, fly the plane with this great equipment. But it is great. It is a great technology.
Good point. Bali, you had a question or something to add?
Yeah. Just a comment. Yeah, it's great for things like, as an English teacher, it's great for things like, generating lists of like pronunciation points or grammar points or things that would take a long time to, research. But it really does hallucinate, because once I asked it, I was part of a book group, and I said, generate a summary of this book and some discussion questions just to see what it would do. And it was completely wrong. But if I hadn't read the book, I would have thought, yeah, this sounds like a great summary with great discussion, questions. I guess it had just like summarized, little bits and pieces and come up with false themes. so it's great, but it's still, evolving. And I put in the chat note in the notes, one thing that I think is really concerning is the potential effects on children. Of AI, especially things like, I think I can forget what it's called. Is it character AI, like a teddy that talks? Yeah. So one of my former students actually co-founded a nonprofit that's devoted to studying that, and then coming up with recommendations for governments and also for parents about what to buy, what to not buy for your child. So I put the link in the chat, because that is scary. Like the example of like a talking teddy bear where the company discontinues the product, and for example, the child thinks, oh, my teddy bear died. It's much worse than just losing your stuffed animal like we had. So just there's all kinds of ethical issues around AI, I think, especially with children.
Yeah, what company was that? I remember reading about that recently.
I have a question for Bali. As an educator, Bali, what do you think about the argument that AI is trying to take the creativity out of the students. It's like it's what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's early days yet, but for people our age, we already know how to write, right? We already have these skills. And so I think it's fine to use AI to help you brainstorm and things like that. But my concern is that the young generation might never learn how to write because the AI is doing everything. Like we can all add, subtract, multiply, divide, but we use calculators, right? But we have the underlying skill because we had to learn that. So I think that at this point, like each teacher's coming up with their own AI policy. Some teachers are like, you can use it, but you have to explain how you used it. And you have to show me the drafts of your paper so I can see that you didn't just, copy and paste everything. But yeah, that's a complicated issue. And of course, cheating is just rampant, now with AI. And some teachers are actually going back to the old-fashioned blue book exams where you handwrite your exam in class. So some teachers have gone to that extreme as a way to make sure that the students are actually learning the material.
It's not a bad idea, honestly. I've heard stories of at the end of the prompt, AI prompt, it'll say, "Would you like me to rewrite this as whatever?" The students will add that to their answer as well. They're just that
Humanize.
lazy.
I think humanize so that it will make some errors so that teachers cannot find it out. That's how the students are cheating now.
Yeah.
So, Paul, I have in fact, few things which I want to talk on the AI whistleblowing. So I think the Whistleblowers of America, you guys are championing whistleblowers. So particularly when it comes to AI whistleblowing, I think there is a lack of protection, and I think in this digital age, I personally believe there are 3 key reforms which are needed. One is we need a strong safe harbor provisions. Whenever we disclose evidences of harm to Congress or regulator or designated ethics body, we should be immune from criminal and civil liability related to all this kind of illegal NDAs and trade secrets. I think Jackie has been a great proponent of that. So, and I think we need a dedicated anonymous reporting channel, whatever we have in this NIST, NIH kind of systems where technical experts can evaluate the claim. And third, we need also robust financial incentives and anti-blacklisting protections to ensure whistleblowers can work again. So right now, there's a huge mobbing, gaslighting, and then they are put off the grid on the professional circles, which is also not great. I think people are not coming forward and talking. So I think only employees who are working, building the technology, they are the first ones who can bring what are the gaps in those systems to any regulator or government to kind of go fix. So I think only when we provide some of these protections and some of these reforms, I think we may be able to see a lot of safe AI whistleblowing, which can help us build a lot of good guardrails. Donna, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. And one of the things that I think I touched on at the beginning is that is the whole, not just workers, but anybody who wants to raise a concern should have a mechanism to do that. And also, I think when particularly when the US are legislating, I think it's important to understand that not all software development takes place in the US, that some of it takes place elsewhere. It might take place in the UK, it might take place in Europe, it often takes place in India. And if you've got a software developer working outside of the US jurisdiction, then how does the US have scrutiny of that? How does it support, software developers, developing systems that are inevitably going to be deployed in the US? How is it relying on the third country, the third party, the UK or our legislation? Because there's huge gaps in our legislation. If it's not clear, for example, that if a whistleblower is retaliated against by a parent company or by an executive in the US, which obviously sometimes happens, whether the UK has any jurisdiction over that entity or that person. Also trying to get disclosure from abroad. So actually, if you want to have scrutiny of tech companies developing AI or any advanced technology, then you've got to look at where that development's taking place and legislate accordingly.
Have you guys heard about, or what are your thoughts on AI data center electricity consumption? I've heard several reports of data centers being built extremely quickly, and they are very loud. They put them in residential areas or in poor neighborhoods, and they generally make the surrounding neighborhoods more toxic. You know, with how like they're using, I heard some of them are using coal or some outdated means of energy generation.
I think
We've
we are,
seen that, I think, concerns about water consumption,
That too.
and areas that already don't perhaps already have some issues with having enough water, and then putting in a big data center that's going to consume a lot, far more than its fair share, shall we say. I think also seeing that there's expectations that as the technology improves, the consumption required will be less. But I think that's something that isn't really being explored, I guess, thoroughly enough.
Yeah, these AI ChatGPT, they use an ungodly amount of electricity.
somebody really did a unit economics on this, whatever research we are doing, Paul, recently in LinkedIn. And when I read the research, I think every query, search query, what we are putting in ChatGPT is not equal to whatever we used to do in the Google search or any other search engine. It's taking enormous amount of energy, and every query is, I think, somebody have did the math, $10 or $20, where there's a huge amount of GPU, NVIDIAs of the world, and that's all these data centers by Google, Microsoft, and AWS of the world, which is powering this search. So right now, all these companies are burning money. Maybe I think venture capital world is supporting that, because of which I think we are getting that great results out of the search. But I think they are yet to make money, is what we were told.
Well, apparently there is. I'm not sure if you've heard recently. I think this was just. I just heard about this a couple of days ago, but it seems as though I think MIT did a research or a study that 95% of AI companies don't make a profit or something like that, or they're not profitable. And so they're starting to.
I think they are not making whatever they committed as a results. It's not happening. It's like, I think most of them are still in the infancy stage, and they are yet to see production value, is what I think MIT has analyzed.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the AI bubble is starting to bust, from what I'm hearing. People are starting to sell. So who knows what's gonna happen after that? Honestly, there's supposed to be like only a few. There's gonna only be like a couple of major winners in the AI in the AI world.
Oh, well, that's why I think there's such a, move fast and break things attitude, isn't there? It's that, being the first to market or early in the market is going to be the thing that makes a difference. And I think we are potentially heading towards, I don't know, another .com bubble, potentially.
I think it's so funny how everybody can know what's gonna happen, but we still go through the process.
I think, like Don mentioned, the .com burst. I think there is one another burst which we went through on the blockchain. So I think when the whole blockchain technology was invented, the whole, I think, blockchain community, even though it's a great technology, even I still believe it, but I think they never had great applications beyond the initial few crypto coins, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum. I think they have never found a great set of applications which started impacting humanity. That's where I think they failed miserably. Blockchain as a technology, even though it's a great, it never made its dent to the humanity. So I'm always worried whether AI is going to follow that route, but I don't think so. I think maybe we may not call it AI. For example, this Tesla's autopilot feature is using the same CNN algorithm and many other things what all these AI companies are calling to do a learning and then kind of training and answering, right? So I think in some shape and form, this technology is existent over the past 5 years. So I think this one is not going to be a fad as like blockchain or .com. Mm-hmm. but there is going to be a burst. I think there's a hype. There's certainly a burst which is expected upon.
Yeah, there's too much hype. There's good technology, but it will take time to mature to be properly deployed. It's this vision which will come about, but it's not going to come about as soon as people perhaps think, or at least not reliably. Although who knows? It's hard to say, isn't it? But I think there are a lot of companies out there selling something that doesn't exist, a vision, but some that are,
Yeah. My major worry is if they start to use AIs to create other AIs, because then you just take people out of the equation completely.
I think that's already started there. I think
Really?
people are almost,
I'm not shocked.
And I think one of the other problems is that because AI is good at things like automation and doing the lower level jobs, those are obviously the easier ones that are to do. But what that means is, if you look at whether it's something like law, where you can have AI, perhaps do a paralegal's job. I don't know if you had them in the US, paralegals, but you have a junior lawyer who would be doing a lot of the compiling of the paperwork and creating the bundles and everything else. All of that is, really suitable for AI to do. But what that means then is that your entry-level lawyers don't have anywhere to learn. You've got to start somewhere, and we take out, almost whatever industry it is, you take out that lower level, and it's therefore so much harder for young people to get on the ladder in the first place in their career and learn the basics, because a lot of that stuff is going to be done by AI. So I think that will be a challenge.
Yeah, I'm really curious about how young people growing up, like, middle schoolers are going to grow up utilizing AI, how that's going to change their whole aspect of work, of research, of just anything and everything. I can't even imagine having these kind of tools at my fingertips at that age,
It's both a curse and an opportunity, isn't it? I mean, just think how much information you can get quickly. I mean, we used to have to read encyclopedias and go to the library, and now it's just information's at your fingertips. I mean, it's amazing and fantastic, but also runs the risk of, I think as we were talking earlier, is removing the critical thinking and the ability to understand that to be able to tell whether something's right or wrong, right? If your AI does all your coding and you've never learnt to code, how can you tell whether it's right or wrong?
Yeah.
I think I will go back to the same question what I asked Bali again on this education aspect, how AI technology can be either disruptive or it's going to kill all our creative thinking process. While I think America and I think Europe, everybody is kind of waiting and watching how they can introduce AI as part of the curriculum and help kids also learn this technology, maybe use it more ethically. I think a lot of the Western countries are still thinking and kind of taking a maybe methodological approach. But I think Middle East, China, a lot of this other global South, some of the other markets have already started incorporating a lot of this as part of the curriculum. Maybe I'm very equally curious what kind of impact this is going to make.
Yeah. So we're almost at the top of the hour. Any closing thoughts from you, Shan, and you, Don?
No, I just wanted to mention your event that you've got next month. Did you want to talk about your conference? Because we haven't really spoken about the good things you're going to be talking about there.
Yes, I'll plug that at the end. Don't worry.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just going to say, I'm sorry I can't join you, but I'm sure it'll be an amazing event.
Yes. Shan?
Yeah, I have one closing thought of the whole innovation versus safety argument. So I think it's a false dichotomy. So accountability is a feature, it is not a bug. So we should not accept the argument, for example, from aviation industry or pharmaceutical industry. We are not accepting any kind of thing that, okay, they are not able to innovate because we are expecting them to operate safely, right? We are not accepting that. So we have a very high expectation with respect to their safety standards and quality and regulatory governance stuff. When it comes to aviation, pharmaceutical, and a lot of this critical industry, we should treat AI also on something similar areas, which is high risk, where we should put all those right guardrails, and we should expect them to do a sustainable innovation based on trust. So, and also they should also protect the whistleblowers, and they are not enemies of progress. They are the part of the immune system that is going to stop this entire body from becoming corrupted. So we should also protect the whistleblowers on that note. And I think that's my call to action.
Amen. Thank you so much, Shan and Don, for joining us this evening for this important topic. Please join us September 17th and 9th through 19th for our Workplace Promise Institute conference. It's going to be held in DC this year at the Legion. They're hosting it for us. Thank you very much, Legion. But yeah, we're going to be, Jackie will be hosting and moderating it. Our keynote speaker is going to be Caroline Hunt, the UN whistleblower. So definitely come out. You can come in person or virtually. And on that note, thank you everybody for joining us, and have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Thanks a lot, Jackie, and have a great event.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry about today.
Thank you.
It's been quite a day.
Oh, nice to see you, Jackie.